For my final Engineering 103 project, I wanted to test the temperature in my dorm room. I live in Cawthorn and it's notoriously hot inside, and I don't think we have AC, and I just wanted to see how hot it actually was. I used a LM75 temperature sensor and ran it over a 3-hour period and recorded the 10-minute averages and an overall average and a min and max temperature value. For my code, I included some libraries that allowed me to use certain functions, and the LM75.h library that allows me to use functions that read the temperatures off the sensor. I did download that off the internet. I initialized a whole bunch of my variables that I would then use later in my loop. And then I set up the 10 minutes so that it would print my statistics every 10 minutes. For my setup, I set up my baud rate, and then underneath that, what that does is it just prints the starting temperature and then goes into the rest of the code. In my loop, I first set up the time, so then the rest of the code would actually run. I ran mine, it would give me a temperature value every 5 seconds just so I didn't have as much data and I had more space. Then the termo.getTemp is the function that actually gets the temperature from the sensor. To set up my max and min values, I used a few if statements. If that measurement read by the sensor is greater than the highest value, it becomes that highest value. And if it's less than the lowest value, it becomes my new min. And so the serial print measurement in degrees Celsius, this just prints my temperatures like that. And so this portion of the code is what prints out all my statistics every 10 minutes. So this if statement says if the current time, since it last print out the statistics, is greater than or equal to that 10 minutes, it's going to then print out my statistics. So I used a variable 10-minute count, and I use that for the overall average. So my 10-minute average is just the sum of all my measurements divided by that measurement count. And for my overall average, I added all the 10-minute averages up, and then so for the first one, it would just take that first 10-minute average, and that becomes my overall average. After that, if that 10-minute average count does not equal 1, then I would divide that overall average by 2, because what it does is it takes that previous overall average and adds a new 10-minute average and then just divides that by 2. This is where I print all my statistics, my 10-minute average, my overall average, my highest value, and my lowest value. After this, I set all my variables back down to 0 so that for after the next 10 minutes, it'll give me new averages. This is how I set up my sensor and my board. I have my USB cord connecting to the board, which then has 4 wires that connect to the sensor like that. I had to solder the pin just to make sure that the temperatures would actually read. Without soldering, it would just read zeros and wouldn't work. So this is the code running. Every 5 seconds, as you see, it'll print out, or about every 5 seconds, it'll print out a new temperature value from which the sensor is read. It's pretty consistent right now, but it's still pretty hot. As you can see right here, every 10 minutes it'll print this statistics in place of like the temperature, or it'll print the temperature and then right underneath that it'll print the statistics. For that, the 10-minute average was 20.97, overall average was 22.93, and the highest value is 25.62, all in degrees Celsius. Every once in a while, it'll just read 0.00. I think that's due to me accidentally moving the sensor around. When I ran it for the 3 hours, I wasn't touching the sensor, so I didn't get any of these 000 values. but as you can see right here, this lowest value is 000. If I hadn't touched the sensor, it would read some value, probably about 22 or something. For the data I got, I started at 8:32 p.m. and ran it for 3 hours till 11:32 p.m. The averages I got over each 10 minutes slowly decreased. I assume this was just because it was obviously cooling off. I had a overall average of 23.85 degrees Celsius, but my max value that the sensor read was 26.94 degrees Celsius, which is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It's really hot. I got a minimum value of 21 degrees Celsius, which was probably just something happened. I don't know. That's kind of a outlier, but my data graph, as you can see, it's over time, the data or my averages kind of slowly decreased. So in conclusion, I found that it is really hot in Cawthorn. I wasn't wrong. My data supports that. I got minimum of 21 degrees Celsius, max 26 degrees. Those are both really hot. I don't know how we live in this. It sucks. Yeah.